Welcome to Laugh Through the Turbulence, a New York Jets podcast, the show that delivers you all your Jets content. Here are your hosts, John, Adden, and Monty. All the best to the New York Jet fans. J-E-T-S, Jets, 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 go Jets.
Happy Tuesday, everybody.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, today we have a special guest, someone that we are a big fan of here. Please welcome co-owner of Jets X Factor and the co-host of Cool Your Jets podcast, and now a friend of the show, Michael Nania.
Yeah, let's go.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. I saw as the second overall pick in your media draft, and I had to reach out and show my appreciation. I think it's a little high, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I gave my reasoning. I think I have pretty sound reasoning, and it made sense. So
I think I should be a top 5 pick. I would just say
exactly.
Blewett and Sabo. I put Blewett and Sabo over me because Sabo working hard on the beat, something that I can't do down from North Carolina, and he does an awesome job. And then Blewett's just been grinding it.
Yeah, Blewett's a film genius. But
I think I'm a top 4 prospect.
Listen, FYI, I had the 3rd pick. I would have taken you 3rd if you didn't go 2nd. So you were absolutely a top 3 pick.
Cool.
I appreciate it.
So what we thought we would do is kind of kick it off with some questions for you, and kind of get to know you. We have some fun ones, some stuff that's up your alley, some stuff that might, throw you for a loop a little bit. So, we'll see how you handle it. But all right, I'll get it started. So, kind of, I guess, an easy one. This is just kind of like for my own purposes. I'm super interested about this. You're a very analytical guy. You have your, you've been writing about the Jets. You've been doing deep dives since, like I said, all the way back, doing the Sam Darnold project, which hats off to you for that one. So what is like your typical process when you're doing Jets analytics? Like what sort of sources are you tapping into? Like, obviously like us plebes, we're just looking at PFF, and we look at Pro Football Reference and ESPN and all that stuff. But sources, any databases, stuff that, maybe the regular folks, aren't thinking of or don't have access to. And then what's like your whole process for going about Jets analytics?
Well, you guys definitely aren't plebes. Just by asking that question, I know you're not, because I've never been asked that. So, and just the fact that you remember the Sam Darnold project and like all that from the worst era of Jets football of all time shows me that like we're all in this together here. We're diehards. So, but yeah, I mean, like the Jets are always on my mind for me. Like even if I'm not sitting down writing or doing a podcast or whatever, it's always floating around in my head. So whatever idea kind of goes through my head, like, how's Tyler Conklin going to benefit from Aaron Rodgers? Or, what's Chuck Clark going to do coming back to the defense this year? Any random idea like that just kind of floats through my head during the day, I'll usually jot it down. And I kind of just naturally come up with the idea for an article or a tweet or a video or whatever it is that I'm putting together. The ideas kind of naturally come. During the day, I'll jot it down, and by the time I sit down to write something, I kind of have an idea of what I want to look into and kind of, what my opinion is, but then also what I want to find out. And so I'll dig up some numbers, whether it's, PFF, and, PFF grades can be questionable, and like some of the, people who tweet for them and all that. So, but their database in the back end is, if you know how to use it, I think there's a lot of cool stuff there. So I use that, and various other sites, like what used to be Football Outsiders is now FTN Fantasy. They kind of migrated. So there's that as well. They have the DVOA and all that. Yeah. Pro Football Reference is another one. So yeah, I'll usually sit down with an idea of what I want to find out, and I'll have like my original idea. Like, what I think, like what's something I've done recently? Like Chuck Clark. Like I think Chuck Clark is going to make a positive impact, and I'll be open to finding out maybe something different going into it and kind of combine those things. Like there's one I did recently on Elijah Vera Tucker and his pass blocking, because some outlets such as PFF say that he's really struggled in pass blocking. And personally, I don't feel like he has, based on just, I think most Jets fans would agree that watching him, it doesn't feel like he's been bad as a pass blocker. But some stats say he has, so I'll be like, okay, let's sit down and figure this out. So, like, in that article, I watched all of his pass blocking reps and saw and tried to figure out and be open to, maybe is he actually struggling, and we're not privy to that. But in that article I found, there are some things he can work on, but I don't think he's quite as bad as the numbers say. So yeah, I think it's just kind of going off of random ideas that fly through my head and just sitting down and kind of finding different ways to dive into those ideas and explore them.
Nice.
Question for you real quick. So it's kind of like, I don't know, like if you ever watched Seinfeld back in the day, but like when Jerry's asleep and he's got like a notepad next to him and he just like kind of like really quickly and just like writes a note down and then tries to like interpret it in the morning. Like, what the fuck did I write about, basically?
There are definitely some notes like that in my phone. Sometimes some I write down and I sit down and start doing it and I'm like, you know what, maybe not. Like actually today there's one. I was gonna do something where I was like, I was gonna rank every Jets player on the team. And yes, every player on the team, I've done plenty of things like that where I've ranked every player, like not just like top 10 players or like, no, let's rank everybody. So I was going to do everyone on the team based on how high am I on them compared to Jets fans. But then I was going through it and I was like, I kind of like everybody. There are not many players on this team I don't like that much. I'm a fan of this roster right now. It's kind of hard to pick out players that I look at and like, I don't really like that guy so much. So I kind of scrapped that one because I didn't really find that much differentiation in terms of like, I like this guy, I don't like that guy. I like this roster right now. So it was hard to do that. So yeah, there are some ideas that get written down that don't come to fruition.
That's
cool.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this roster as well. And I kind of wanted to ask a question that it actually ties into a tweet that you sent out today about the Jets record when they've allowed under 300 yards, per game, how they have like a 400 some odd winning percentage. And the other teams that have done that have like a 600, 700, 800% winning percentage, right? So when I look at this roster, one of the questions that I have kind of on the defensive side, and I've been saying this for a while, and I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong. I look at this defense, we understand the concept, right? Wide 9, cover 3, cover 2, or cover 4, keep everything in front of you, man, sometimes on third down, let the waves of pass rushers get to the quarterback, right? We know all of that. But when I look at this defense, I also feel like they've been leaning on that more because kind of to your tweet, they can't trust the offense, right? So now that you have Rodgers, you have these, offensive linemen that you brought in, better wide receivers, the offense should be better as a whole. Is there another level for this defense to get to in terms of being more exotic, things of that nature? Or is this just a case of this is what Saleh and Ulbrich do, and that's that?
I do think that they're mostly going to stick to those philosophies because, going back to San Francisco where Saleh comes from, I think they're still very much borrowing from that. And the Niners, I think, still largely kind of stick with that. But what I do think gives them the room to improve because of all the things you mentioned is the opportunity to put to put the opponent into more situations where they could tee off, because I just pulled this up right now. But last year they faced the third most rush attempts in the league and the fourth fewest pass attempts. So for a team that has, a very deep pass rush, you have Jermaine Johnson, Hassan Reddick's coming in. Hopefully McDonald could take a leap. Quinnen Williams, a lot of pass rush talent on here. They haven't really had the chance to fully unleash that because by the time it's the second quarter, teams are in milk the clock mode, or let's say third quarter because the defense keeps it close enough. But very early, you're seeing the other team start to run the ball. They don't have to face as many situations where they're down 2 scores and they have to pass every play. And we've seen when they have gotten into those situations, the rare games where it's the end of the fourth quarter, the Jets are protecting a lead, like the Buffalo game in 22 that they won, the one this year in overtime, and then the Eagles game when the Eagles got the ball back after the interception by Hurts. In situations like that, and the Broncos game when the Jets are up, when they are protecting leads, we've seen that they are really good in those clutch situations. And I think that's a small glimpse into what they could do with an offense that actually gives you leads and lets you play from ahead against an offense that has to actually pass the ball and go into those type of situations. So I think that's where the next level can be tapped into because of this new supporting cast.
Yeah. You think anything like blitzes would go up by any chance too? Just like because with like maybe like some more third and long situations, I guess, in that situation. Because like typically like the Jets, they just went with 4 and just kind of did their thing in the back, right? So like, and I guess that kind of like leads into like maybe like some of the other questions I have. And bear in mind, like I'm wearing a 99 jersey, but this ain't Will McDonald. But like kind of my question for you, like it's actually Hugh Douglas, which is a throwback to when he was a rookie pass rusher for us. But I guess like just kind of what we're seeing from him, like in OTAs and like maybe some of the limited tape we have where like, I guess like, I mean, he's kind of there to kind of fill a little bit of the Bryce Huff void. But I mean, is there any comfort that we've seen in any of the limited tape that like maybe suggested like, hey, he is going to take the next leap and like the Jets had this right on that?
I'm really confident in him because the tape that we did see last year was like, I think it was legit and it was very small. And obviously he has to build on that, playing more reps. I mean, he only played, I think, 99 snaps as a pass rusher. So very little. But when he was out there and Blewett did a film review on it recently, that was great. But between both, you know, the eye test, seeing the bend that he showed off the edge, a lot of really quick wins. Sometimes he didn't get there because the ball was out quick or something. But just his explosiveness off the line and really more than anything, like I said, the bend around the corner. That's the one trait that you look at. You look at him and you see guys like Von Miller and these top tier pass rushers. Not saying he's going to, be that caliber player, but you see that type of physical trait that gives him the upside. And then the length that he has gives him the knack for strip sacks. He had one last year. He had a lot of forced fumbles in college. So I think he has that strip sack upside too. And then, so you see the eye test, but the numbers were there too. Like what he did on limited reps. I think he had 3 sacks in the box score, but it was 2 full, 2 half. So he was there for 4 sacks on under 100 pass rush snaps. He had 5 quarterback hits, forced fumble. Like he had good production for a guy who barely played. So hopefully he could take that same level of production and, multiply it by however many more snaps he plays. And I think he's a really good player there. So we'll see if he could do it and make that same sort of leap that Jermaine Johnson made in his second year last year.
Yeah, I totally agree with your assessment there. And I think that, the Jets just in general do a great job of development on the defensive side. And, I see that. I totally see him making that leap in next year, just like JJ did. Totally agree. Just to switch gears a second. So, everyone's favorite famous Jets media personality, Manish Mehta. He wrote an article about you back in from the New York Daily News, and he called you, I think, the deepest thinker, smartest analyst in the Jets media space. And I was just curious as to that was when you were 19. So how did you get your start doing Jets analytics, and then how did that turn into the creation of Jets X Factor?
Yeah, so the very start was when I was in high school. I would write just comments and posts on Gangrene Nation. Mm-hmm. They had a section called fan posts where anyone could go on and write an quote unquote article. It wouldn't go on the front page, but there's a little section for it. So I used to do that a lot, and I would do it during school. At our school, they gave everyone MacBooks at my school, which I thought was great. I don't know if that's regular now. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I know before that,
iPads now, I think.
Yeah, but we had MacBook Airs,
cool.
which I thought was crazy. But because I didn't have that in the previous school.
Yeah, we're old as fuck, so we didn't get that shit.
Yeah,
we were just learning how to type, bro. We were just learning how to type in high school.
Typewriter. Yeah. So yeah, I had that while I was in school, and just during classes and stuff, I'd be writing articles and things like that. So I did that for a little bit. Then eventually they reached out to me and made me an actual writer there. So I did that for a couple of years. Was writing a few other sites, and then eventually I connected with Robbie, and he kind of had the idea to start this site together. And we worked on that leading into the 2020 season, and we launched it that year. And we've been doing it since then. And the article is really cool. I mean, Manish was, working with me, reaching out to me, he was very cool, connecting with me and just asked me questions and wanting to do this article. So that's a cool experience to to do that. And that was only the first year of Jets X Factor too. So it was cool that, he saw that so early after we started.
Question for you on that, just to kind of follow up. Like, if you weren't doing Jets X Factor, what do you think you would be doing? Because I see you as like a super analyst, right? Like, I don't know if you'd be like trading like cobalt futures or something like that. Like right now, I don't know what you like. What would you be like focused on if you weren't doing like Jets X Factor and all that right now? Like, just Jets analytics in general.
Yeah, I mean, so initially I went to college here in North Carolina at Appalachian State. You might remember Doug Middleton, Jets safety, went there. A few NFL guys came out of there. Yeah. But yeah, I went there out of high school, and I went for like, it was like sports media broadcasting or something like that. But yeah, I did want to pursue a degree in that and maybe become like a broadcaster or, beat reporter, writer, something in sports media. But in the middle of that, I was, doing my Gangrene Nation. I was writing at one point. I think I was writing for 4 or 5 different sites at once. So I was just like gaining good traction with that and with the Twitter and everything. So I figured it would be better to focus on that than to stay there for 4 years. So luckily my parents were on page with that too. So I was only there for like half a year before I came home to focus on all this stuff. And luckily it panned out pretty well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just quickly follow. Are you in North Carolina right now, or were you in North?
Yeah.
Are you? I'm in Durham. I just moved here from New York. So yeah, North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm in Charlotte.
Very cool. Yeah, just a couple of hours away. That's awesome. I'm a big North Carolina fan since I moved here. So that's definitely a cool state. And in relation to kind of like what we've been talking about, I want to shift gears kind of towards the offense here, because one of the things that we've been discussing is, I've seen things obviously in like the national media where Aaron Rodgers isn't a top 3 quarterback anymore. He's not a top 5 quarterback anymore. I look at it and saying, we've looked at it, we're like, if Aaron Rodgers is a top 12 to 16 quarterback, this team can at a minimum win the division. If they get the 16th best quarterback in football, they've made the biggest improvement in offense that any team in football has. So with that kind of said, like, what are your expectations for Rodgers? Where do you see him performing? What do those outcomes look like in terms of level of success? And just generally, what do we consider a successful season or a failed season, taking everything into account?
Well, yeah, first of all, I mean, like you said, I think the bar is low for him in terms of what he needs to do for the Jets to be a playoff team, a competitive team. I mean, like the last 2 years with Zach Wilson as a quarterback, they were 10-11. So they were basically a 500 team with, probably the worst starting quarterback in the league over the past 2 years. So you go from that to, like you said, top 12 to 16 at worst. At worst, that's like probably the biggest quarterback upgrade in the NFL. Plus, what you're hoping to get out of the offensive line, hopefully they can stay healthy. It's about time this offensive line stays healthy, and if they do, the talent ceiling is better than anything they've had in a long time. So, considering those things and where you hope they are defensively, if he's average or slightly above average, that should be enough to get 10-11 wins at the least. And recently, Rivka, Jets X Factor, did a good article on this. But I think the Chiefs this year showed a model for, you don't have to have dominant, offensive and quarterback play to win the Super Bowl. And obviously, Mahomes is Mahomes. But if you look at, for most of the season, people were just nonstop criticizing that offense. They finished the year 15th in scoring. And in the playoffs, they weren't that explosive on offense either. They won because they had a great defense this year, and Mahomes came through when he needed to. But because of, I think he was still as great as he always was, but because of the lack of receivers and other issues around him, he didn't put up amazing numbers, like 27 touchdowns, 14 picks, 93 passer rating. That's not that different than what Rodgers did in 2022 when he had similar issues around him with receivers and offensive line and things like that. So I think the Chiefs showed you last year that with a great defense and a great quarterback who, even if he's not shredding teams, dominating with big numbers throughout the year, but can make the big plays when you need him to, his experience in the playoffs, you can win with that. But at the same time, I do think Rodgers is fully capable of getting back to. I don't see MVP levels still in him at this age, but top 5 I think is within reach for sure if he stays healthy. Because like you look at his 2022 film, like numbers weren't great, like I said, they dipped that year, but just purely looking at him and accounting for the fact that his top receiver was the guy who got benched on this year's team, Alan Lazard, and he still looked really good.
Yeah,
I think his production going down that, and he had a broken thumb for
a
most of the year.
Avulsion fracture,
which you do have to account for. Like he could play through something again this year, even if he doesn't have a season-ending injury. So hopefully he can stay healthy. But looking back at the last time we saw him pre-Achilles, season-ending injury, I think he was still a top 10 quarterback in 2022. Even numbers were down, but just purely looking at him, accounting for the surroundings, he still looked like Aaron Rodgers, some of the throws he was making, especially like that Miami game at the end of the year. I remember watching that because like the Jets playoff hopes were hanging on by a thread, and we were rooting for the Packers to beat the Dolphins, and they did it. And he had so many crazy. He was throwing a Mercedes Lewis in that game, so the weapons weren't really there for him to put up numbers. So I still trust that if he's healthy and the pieces around him are there, that he can be a top 5 to 8 quarterback in the league.
Before I ask my next question, am I crazy to tell people that they should take whatever over there is on Alan Lazard's?
I was just gonna say that. I'm so down on Alan Lazard.
It's gotta be so low. It's gotta be so freaking low because he was such trash last year and everyone like ripped on him, right? Like I think like he's a rebound candidate for like at least 500 yards, right? Like and like I should slam that, right? Because I need the money.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious. I'm trying to look it up right now. Do you know? Is there a number on it? Because
I have not been able to find it, and I'm a degenerate gambler.
If it's what did he get this past year? Was it 215, something like that? If it's somewhere around that, then
terrible.
I definitely go over what he did last year, and that's not even me saying I'm a 311 he had, and that's not even me saying I'm a big Lazard fan or anything because he was atrocious by any measure. But Rodgers likes him, and they did add Mike Williams and Corley, but Corley's a rookie, and the depth beyond Mike Williams is like there's going to be competition there. I think we'll see how Corley acclimates if he can fully grasp the route tree and be more than just jet sweep guy to start. I think he's capable of that, but we'll see to start out what he does. And I think like Lazard was terrible last year, but he's better than that. Like in Green Bay, I think he was overpaid a little bit by the Jets, and he showed in 2022 that I think as in a big role that's not ideal for him. But you look at those first 3 Green Bay years, and he was getting like 45 to 60 targets a year. He was putting up touchdowns. He was good in the red zone, and he made a couple of big plays when he needed to, when he was a background piece. So he's better than he was last year, and Rodgers likes him, has the chemistry with him. So I think he will do more than last year. All I expect from him or hope to get from him is like just throw him the ball 2 to 3 times a game and just make the most of those. I don't need you to be a huge piece of the offense, but just catch the ones that come your way, be active in the red zone, because that's what he did his first few years with the Packers, and he was pretty decent at it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not totally crazy. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. That's always a concern. All right, I got a crazy hypothetical scenario question for you. This one is totally off the cuff. It has nothing to do with maybe your analytics has helped you with this question.
Nah.
But basically, you're at the club hanging out with a girl, and this Jets player sees the girl you're with and tries to make his move to steal your girl. Basically, which Jets player is the biggest threat to steal your girl?
Oh, the biggest threat?
Yeah. Like basically just like, oh no, that dude's talking to her.
Jermaine Johnson.
Yes.
Yes.
Dude,
yes.
It's so funny. He froze.
Yeah. That's a good pick, right?
Oh,
no,
there you go.
That's a great pick. That was my pick. Yeah.
So it's so funny.
Okay.
We had when we first started doing this, we had Izzy on as a guest. And we asked him that question also, and he said Jason Brownlee. And we were like, no, we all thought it was Jermaine Johnson. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, Jermaine Johnson basically married like Zach Wilson's mom's double, right? Essentially. But like, yeah, and he's always shirtless in everything that he does. So like, yeah, Jermaine scares me because that guy's probably smooth as hell on that one. But Bradley's
I mean, I thought of Michael Clemens, but I mean, he'd be the biggest threat to kill me or
or
whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of this specific question, I just feel like maybe I don't know if he has as much game as Jermaine Johnson does. I feel like that's the edge.
I feel like Michael Clemens could have beaten Achilles in the movie Troy. You know, after they sent one warrior each, they just sent out Michael Clemens. Achilles just runs away and goes back to that tent.
Yeah, 100%. Clemens is a scary individual, but to bring this back to football and kind of tie it back to stuff that you guys are doing, Mike, I saw over the weekend, I think it was, a couple of days, Sabo was tweeting a little bit and answering some questions about the Jets in relation to Malachi Corley. And there were some concerns, I guess, that people were kind of like tweeting out, like, he's been a little bit banged up. He's running with the second team right now, which all I think is fair for a rookie. But is there anything like we should be concerned about, considering the fact that the Jets love Corley? He brings a skill set that really no one on the team has. Like, you had mentioned it earlier that maybe initially he's just going to kind of be a jet sweep gadget guy. Yeah. Like, what does that kind of look like to you in terms of like his first year? Can he carve out a role? Gibson sounds like he's eating his lunch in OTAs and minicamp. So we were just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think first of all with Gibson, I think it's good to hear positive buzz on him because obviously we all want Corley to be good. And to make an instant impact. But the more weapons you have, the more depth you have. I think that's great if Gibson can add that because I think there is some potential there because he's really good with the ball in his hands. He's just got to be better at securing it because he put it on the ball on the ground a lot last year.
Yeah.
So I think it's good that he's making some waves, some buzz, pushing Corley. But I'm not reading in too much into Corley early on. Maybe not lighting it up so much because the Jets generally do. Under this regime, make rookies really earn it. Like Sauce Gardner I look back at it just to make sure, but in 2022, the first initial depth chart going to camp, it was split with him and Bryce Hall as the competing for a starting cornerback spot, which is crazy to look back on. So they do tend to do that, really make rookies earn it. So I think we're going to see that with Corley, and maybe that goes into the beginning of the year and he starts out behind Gibson, maybe Lazard, and he is just a gadget guy, and then it kind of gradually works, his workload increases towards maybe middle of the season. So I think we could see something like that. But long term, I do really think he has more upside to his game than the general billing that you're getting from him. If you saw his highlights when they drafted him, or what the news articles might have said, because and Blewett showed it great in his review of him too. Like, there's a lot of vertical stuff on his tape from last year. He really isn't just the yak king. There's, a lot of seam routes, go routes, things like that, and ability to go up and get those jump balls. It's just definitely needs some route running refinement to be able to do that more consistently in the league. So I think down the line, he does have the potential to do that. Mike Williams is, on an expiring contract, so the door is open for Corley to be that number 2 for the long term. And I think he's going to make a good push to do that. But I do think to start out, he's going to be brought along fairly slowly. But that's just looking at it right now. He has the whole training camp to really make a push to be a bigger piece early on, especially with Mike Williams. And he'll probably play the first game. But, we'll see how, because Breece Hall did kind of have the training wheels to start last season.
Right.
And he's a lot younger than Mike Williams was or is right now. So we'll see how he acclimates to start the year. Maybe that gives Corley an opportunity to be more involved. So we'll see. But I'm not too concerned with, right now Gibson seemingly being over him, because I think the Jets just like to make their rookies earn things.
Yeah, and also, Corley is going to be living in Rodgers' guest house, so hopefully that can help accelerate things a little bit.
for sure.
Yeah. So sticking on the kind of offensive note a little bit, just my personal take is I think one of the Jets only real weaknesses right now is at coaching. Specifically with the offensive coordinator role. So I kind of want to get a gauge on like how confident you are in Hackett. And kind of the rest of the offensive staff, Carter, Downing. I'm not a big fan of Carter either, especially considering the reports that, the Jets were considering to replace Hackett, in the offseason. And, Rodgers and Hackett should be able to figure things out during the regular season. But do you see Hackett as a liability in the playoffs? Because, I mean, personally, I do, but I want to get your kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's definitely fair, I think, to list the coaching as the greatest issue because, I mean, the roster on paper, and the more you see people talk about it and try to poke holes in it nationally, I think the more you understand how complete the roster is. Like these articles coming out, there was one recently that I think it was NFL.com. They had the 10 biggest roster holes in the league. One of them was like Jets tight end too. It's like, okay, that kind of shows you if that's what we're worried about. We're in a good spot.
Yeah,
it wasn't long ago we didn't have a quarterback, a cornerback one, any edge rusher, any good tackle. So they've come a long way. On paper, the talent is there. But yeah, it always comes down to how much can you get out of that talent. Because when you look at the champions in the league, it's the great coaches who can maximize their teams because, there's so many New England teams that won Super Bowls where, they definitely had talent, but, there are guys who win with them, go to other places, aren't as good.
Andy Reid.
Then Andy Reid with the Chiefs. Like this Chiefs team past year had no right winning a Super Bowl. That was not one of the 5 most talented teams in the NFL last year.
Not one
there
single.
they were again.
Yeah, not one single 1,000-yard receiver on the team.
Exactly, and I think Mahomes deserves so much credit for the 3 rings, but Andy Reid getting that team, with a lot of turnover across the rest of that roster to 3 Super Bowls in this short span is credit to him as well. So coaching and maximizing the talent that you have and getting more out of players you're not supposed to get more out of is a huge part of winning Super Bowls because talent can get you to the playoffs. I think Miami is a good example of this. And Mike McDaniel's, I think, a good coach, like scheme wise. Yeah, but we've seen like they have the talent, they have the scheme, and they get to the playoffs. But can they get past that point when teams start to figure them out? And so far they haven't. Maybe they can at some point, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think the head coaches like, McVay did it the one year. Obviously, Belichick and Reid we brought up. The head coaches who can really maximize a whole roster usually win the Super Bowls, whether they're the best team in the league talent-wise or not for that given year. So can Robert Saleh do that? I have faith that he can because, I was super high on him. He was my favorite option going into that coaching cycle, and they got him, so I was thrilled. But, 3 years in now, he hasn't been dealt the greatest hand in terms of injuries and quarterbacking. He's been great on defense. But there have been some questions with, game management, just offensive talent development and offensive hires, which are, that's on him as the head coach to hire the right people. And you mentioned Carter, a guy who, doesn't have the greatest resume in terms of how players seem to view him, which, I think at offensive line, maybe it's like some of the questions are not good in a way, but, as an offensive, you would like your offensive line coach to be tough on guys. But at the same time, it does seem like he's, maybe pushed it a little too far with some guys, but we'll see. Maybe it'll work with this group and could get the most out of some of these guys. But yeah, I think with Hackett, you're hoping because I think it's pretty clear he's not good. He's been at a lot of stops at this point, and outside of when he's been with Aaron Rodgers, he has not been productive outside of 1 year at the Jaguars where they mostly won because of their defense. Yeah. So it's pretty well established. He's not great, but it worked when he was with Rodgers. And I think you're hoping that, his ability to get to the line and basically be the offensive coordinator himself can override that. That's what I think Jets fans are holding on to. And we'll see we'll see how far that can get them, or if, game planning and things like that comes back to bite them.
I have a question. Wait, real quick. I have one question about that Jaguars year, right? Like wasn't it like the Bortles year where he was like, he actually kind of like surprised people every once in a while, like that game against Pittsburgh, and then like wasn't like Allen Robinson like a 14 touchdown like first or second team All Pro that year? I mean, like he dealt like Bortles that year, right? Like we know that guy's trash,
yeah, that's when he had like he had like 35 touchdowns that year. That was the one random year he was really good. So
yeah.
I guess that's the best year that he has going for him outside of the Rodgers years, especially because Rodgers years, Matt LaFleur is above him, Rodgers is above him. So like, how much credit do you really want to give him? So you can give him the Jaguars year, but we'll see. I think the biggest impact is going to be in terms of like game planning, because I think Rodgers is going to make a lot of changes during games, but it's like opening scripts of games coming out of second half, and then just general game planning throughout the game. Like, is the other team going to come out and consistently throw things at the Jets that they don't have answers for because the game plan wasn't ready for it? So things like that the quarterback might not be able to overcome are the things you're concerned about. So we'll see how much they can overcome that, or if Hackett can improve in those areas. It's definitely the biggest question mark, I think.
Is there someone that comes to mind as far as an OC that would have been realistic for us to maybe get now or get after this year? I mean, because it's like it was tough to get someone for this year because everyone's job's on the line. No one knows what's going to happen. We're possibly an Aaron Rodgers injury away from this all blowing up, God forbid, knock on wood. So I could see like why no one would want to test the waters now. But is there someone in mind that you think that we could get reasonably that could really give us that upgrade that would be a good fit offensively to lead our offense in that coordinator role?
To be honest, there's no one who really comes to mind for me right now, just because I'm not like super familiar with who might be available or what the movement might be. And I do know this offseason, like, as much as I was calling for him to be fired, at times I was even maybe a little overreacting in terms of like Saleh as well. There were times when I was calling for him as well. Maybe in hindsight a little bit of an overreaction, but yeah, it didn't seem like there were too many options for them to even go to if Hackett were to leave. I mean, I think a lot of people would be better than him, but because of the relationship, I guess it was worth keeping him. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the toughest part of wanting to improve over him, is like, who do you go to? Who is outside of going to a rookie who might be hard to trust, like an up and coming type of guy. Like, is there even a veteran coordinator out there who would clearly be better than Hackett? And then at that point, is he clashing with Rodgers and things like that? So yeah, for me, like, I just don't really know enough to really pinpoint who might be an option or not.
Yeah. You can always bring back crazy eyes Adam Gase.
Hey, I mean, it worked. He worked with Peyton. He had some good years.
Had some good ones.
Sounds stupid, but yeah.
That was all Gase. I don't think like Peyton Manning had nothing to do with that. Adam Gase was such a genius. He lifted him up.
Yeah, that was without Gase, where would Manning be? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, we saw. I mean, he fell off after Gase went. They won the Super Bowl, but Peyton Manning was terrible the year after Gase. He was totally lost. That was
nothing to do with spinal fusion surgery. Not really.
I'm shocked Gase couldn't get anything out of Christian Hackenberg, right? Like any of those guys. So actually, Mike, I wanted to ask you a question before I get into my actual question. So I was looking at the Jets preseason schedule, and I know that the Panthers don't, have training camp in North Carolina, but it looks like the Jets and the Panthers are going to be having a joint practice together. If that's open to the public, is that something that you might go to?
Well, I went last year when they had it in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Yeah,
and it was cool, but very, very hot.
Very hot.
Not super enjoyable, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, listen,
you're in the South now.
Yeah, no, that's the South of the South, right?
You're in the South now.
Carolina is a little a little outside of that. But listen, if you do go this year, I'm going to keep in contact with you. I'm inviting myself to come, so I'm going to tag along, and we'll go watch the Jets in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Make a stop at south of the border.
I don't know if they scheduled this. I do think they moved their training camp this year to their facility in Charlotte instead of
that would be even
Spartanburg, where they usually do it. So I don't know yet if I'm going to the practice. We'll see. But game, probably. I went to the game last year as well. So
I guess you don't have to make a pit stop at that south of the border spot over there. I love that place, by the way.
It is great.
I definitely. I don't know. I may or may not have stopped. I might have been really young when I stopped there, but I definitely remember driving past that and any drive to Disney that we insanely did instead of flying when I was younger.
Yeah, I've stopped there a couple of times on the way to Myrtle Beach, so I definitely know that place.
I always stop by south of the border, and also just to try and see if I can land myself a JPP type contract, at some point with the fireworks sales that they have there.
So I have a question for you that I think is the funniest question to ask, and usually I can't get through it without asking it. You may not find it as hysterical as I do, but this is a question courtesy of John, but I get to ask it because I love it so much. So which Jet player is most likely to have a secret double life as a Mexican professional wrestler?
Wow. Okay. That's a good one.
Yes, it is.
I'm trying to think. I think I can come up with a good answer for this one. I'm going to pull up the depth chart here so I can kind of jog my mind here. I'm going to have a good answer.
While you do that, I will say that Izzy's answer was AVT.
I guess that makes sense because he is Mexican American.
Right, exactly. So that was
kind of a low hanging fruit.
Right. We said Joe Tipman. That was our answer. So.
Yeah, we had some freaking awesome questions for Izzy, man. We wasted our wad on now what's probably wide running back 4, maybe even 5 on the depth chart right now.
He'll be fine. We're big Izzy fans.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be okay. Well, I mean, it's tough, but it's a tough league against with running backs these days.
It's hard, and I'm also the chief compliance officer, so John has to be nice to everybody.
I think he froze, but it's okay. We'll get him back in a second. Yeah. I did love that question so much.
No, that's my favorite question that you came up with.
100%. You didn't like who's most likely to drive double the speed limit and also half the speed limit? Mm-hmm. That was really good too, man. Yeah. I also have that clip that we were talking about for that other fun question ready to go.
Oh yeah.
He'll hop back on in a second, and I guess he froze. It's probably because he went for the depth chart.
Technology, right?
Yeah, I wish what's his face Dan Feeney was good. Because that mullet would have been like really good for that.
Oh, that would have been amazing. And for the chugging question, he brings a lot of value if he was good.
I know.
Right?
Is he still with the Chargers right now?
Feeney? Didn't he go to? I thought he went to Miami.
I think he did.
Yeah, he did go to Miami.
He was Chargers, Jets, then Miami.
That's right. Yeah, I got it mixed up.
The mullet, man. He was a cool dude, man. He's definitely the player you want to drink a beer with for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the question with every offensive lineman. And then Izzy said not Tipman, and I was shocked.
Yeah, because Tipman doesn't. Yeah, and you know what? I have a hot take. You ready for this? And I kind of hope Nania is back for it on this one. Mm-hmm. But basically, who should have been living in Aaron Rodgers' guest house? Fucking Zach Wilson. And here's the reason why. It's not because you're literally learning from the best, but also because Rodgers is in the high 30s, approaching 40, and the women that he's probably bringing into his life are around what Zach's preferences are.
Chief compliance officer, we're gonna have to stop. We're gonna have to stop.
There's nothing non-compliant about that.
That is absolutely non-compliant with your innuendos.
So yeah. I mean, from that,
I would say that Zach, just from a football perspective, I mean, that would be like saying, Fashion should live with Tyron Smith, right? Like that's kind of what you want. So from a football perspective, yes.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think Aaron Rodgers is fine without any of that stuff.
Yeah. All right, here we go. He's back on. All right. Yeah.
Sorry, my internet just went
like that.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, my hot take, Nania, was that like Zach should have stayed at Rodgers' house too, like just like Corley, and just like learn from Rodgers like that, and also just like scooped up all the leftovers that Rodgers would have brought in.
Can you hear?
Can you hear?
Hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we hear you perfect.
Do you hear like yourselves coming through the phone? Because like I'm trying to connect my headphones and they're not connecting for some reason.
Oh no, we don't hear ourselves at all. There's no echo or anything. Nothing
Okay.
from you either. So
All right.
Cool.
Should I repeat my last statement, Adnan?
No,
Is that not
no,
compliance officer based?
You should not go into
Why
the
not, man? Like
Listen,
Zach is staying at Rodgers' guest house, and like everything that Rodgers passes on that's in his late 30s, he just
we have to get the answer to the Mexican wrestler question, which is the best question. So let's focus on that.
The best.
That's funny. Yeah.
Well, hang on one second. I need to get a charger for my phone. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, man.
You're good. I'll keep breaking the rules of compliance according to
Yeah, stop being non-compliant. We are running a show that we want everyone to watch. We don't want people to not watch because they don't know what John's gonna say. So let's keep everything above board, which is very important.
Well, I
gotta say is the most off-board stuff that I said got us the most.
I don't know if the more people will watch because they don't know what the hell he's gonna say, or they won't watch because they don't know what the hell he's gonna say. I can't. I haven't made that distinction yet.
This is a family show. We want dads. Listen, we want football fans to watch with their kids so that we grow our audience. We don't need John being non-compliant and then having people say, well, our kids can't watch this, so we won't either, right?
Yeah, well,
the YouTube video is made not when we hit the section, it's not made for kids. So.
I think the idea is just not to get demonetized is the deal. That's kind of the deal. So whatever that does anyway. Yeah, but that's the thing is like, you don't want to get any of your videos because the thing is like once you start to go well, then people go back and they watch your other stuff.
Exactly. And then they're like, whoa, this guy said this, right?
Yeah.
So let's
but on the other side of that, I don't think, what he was saying there. It was just just a whatever comment. It wasn't like
we don't need that kind of content on this channel.
We don't need that over
here. we are football first. We understand the game. We love it, and we want to make sure that is what we are known for, not for ridiculous things that John says that can get us in a lot of trouble. So
basically, like stuff like I hope the trend that went on that Edmonton Oilers Stanley Cup, Western Conference Stanley Cup Finals with that one fan doesn't just translate to
that doesn't translate to our type of content. Maybe that's great for the Edmonton Oilers.
I don't know.
I
don't know anything about that. I don't really.
So there was an Edmonton Oilers fan. They won a game, and she lifted her top up and she was topless.
Magical.
And it was and it went viral. And she then has went on to apologize. So she wasn't very enthused about it.
Let's go. Welcome back.
About that. The internet legitimately
No, it's all good.
It's
no worries,
okay.
Man.
Okay.
I did Mexican not jump out because of the Mexican wrestler question.
Yeah, let's go. Talk to us.
Okay, so I think I settled on DJ Reed. Just because he's one of the shorter guys. He reminds me of Rey Mysterio because of that.
Yeah.
So there we go.
That. See, that's a good one because I've always thought like bigger is better, right? Like a big guy would be a better wrestler. That is an interesting. See, that is why you are the analytical guy that you are.
But those luchadors are not big dudes though. Oh, speaking of DJ Reed, do you think we extend him?
I don't think so. Not because I don't like him. Just there's so many young guys to pay. I just think he's going to be the odd man out.
So do you think
I hate it, but yeah.
Do you think they should? Because I think I would prefer Michael Carter II over DJ Reed if you have to pick one of the two. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think I wish they could, but I think just logically looking at it, thinking like there's only so many guys we could extend. Again, this is no slight on him. Love DJ Reed,
not at all.
But Michael Carter, younger, homegrown guy, I think that him relative to being a slot corner is probably better than Reed on the outside. And I think finding a really good slot guy is difficult. Jets fans have seen a lot of not so great play in the slot, most of the screen. So
Kyle Wilson.
It's tough. So I would go with Michael Carter, I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so all right, so now this is the time to basically admit you were wrong. So what's one take you had about the Jets or like a Jets player that you wish you could take back? And just for context, and I'm just going to admit it, when we signed Adam Gase and he got McKagan out of there, I was like, this is the guy. So I guess like what's your like one take that you're just like a freezing cold take as you would that like is definitely like, oof, I wish I could take that back.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I'm going back to like Sam Darnold there. I think I had some bad ones. I mean, I was a pretty big Sam Darnold backer, especially after 2019. I was like 2019. He didn't really get so much hype because he didn't take that second year leap that a lot of people were looking for. But even after 2019, I think I was like really pro Sam Darnold, and I turned quickly. I think quicker than most. I think after that Colts game in 2020, I was like, all right, this isn't happening. Some people hung on a little bit longer.
Oh, God.
That was the game when I backed out. But I think
that was the Monday night game, right? That was a Monday night game, right? And they like destroyed us with like 5 touchdowns to tight ends and all that, right? Like they had like some crazy Andrew Luck stacking.
I think Darnold had like 3. I don't think Luck still wasn't playing. It was 2020. It was the third game after they just got blown out by the Niners. He had like 3 interceptions.
I remember that one. That was after that was the game where people got hurt at MetLife, the Niners game, and then the game after was called. I remember.
Yeah. So I would say like after 2019 is very pro Darnold, and the Jets didn't draft this guy, but one of my worst draft takes. I was a huge Josh Rosen fan. I thought he was going to be the best quarterback in that class. That's way off. There are a lot of hits there are at least 2 really good quarterbacks out of those 5, and only one that was a total bust, and that was the guy I thought was the best. So
it's so funny you say that because I remember going into that draft night, there were rumors about what the Jets were going to go do at 3. The day of is when it was really solidified that Baker Mayfield was going to go 1. And then the Giants were dead set on Barkley at 2, and the Jets were at 3. And I remember like an hour and a half before the draft, Mel Kiper and McShay, they were talking about how for the Jets at 3, it was between Darnold and Rosen. And I was the complete opposite of you. I was like, anyone but Rosen. I would take one of the 4 of us at quarterback over Rosen. And I was so worried. And I was like, they're going to mess this up. And when they took Darnold, I thought it was the best pick they've ever made. Turned out not to be, but I was glad it wasn't Rosen.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that whole process. Like, Darnold was not really mentioned. It wasn't until the day of the draft you're like, oh, Brown. Like, Darnold was kind of penciled in for the Browns. It wasn't until draft day where they're like, oh, they're going to go Mayfield. We might get Darnold. And I thought that was like a huge.
I wanted Baker. You know, Monty and I were talking about this at the office because we were in the office back then. And I was like, I want Baker, and he wanted Lamar, and he was
So right. I was thinking about it like that going into that draft, and I was like, Darnold's going to go 1 out of the remaining quarterbacks. I want Baker Mayfield, and I'm sure you guys heard the story that I think it was Connor Hughes told that the Broncos wanted to trade up to 2 to draft Darnold. And Elway was calling Gettleman, and he was so dead set on Barkley at 2 that he wasn't even answering the phone. And he was like, we were willing to offer him whatever he wanted to get up to 2 to get Darnold, and Gettleman wasn't answering the phone because he was that dead set on Barkley, which I was like, that's insane. He didn't take a phone call.
Wow.
Yeah, and another one from that draft. When the Bills took Josh Allen, I think I celebrated a little bit. I was so convinced that he was going to be bad that I was so happy if they got.
And he didn't start great.
Same.
He didn't start great, not until when Diggs came around. Then then his career really took off. But he wasn't like out of the gate, like lighting it up like some other quarterbacks.
Yeah,
no, that was a very interesting draft. It's like the 2 best quarterbacks were Allen and Lamar, and you're like, wait, what about these other guys? So it was really interesting, and I think speaking of quarterbacks, one thing I wanted to ask you just bluntly, Mike, is, how many games do you expect Tyron Smith to play? Because I'm glad they drafted, Fashanu, because they needed that backup left tackle of the future. But, what do you think is realistic for him based on the fact he's been playing, 12, 13, 14 games a season?
Yeah. Less.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll go with, that 11 to 13 range. I mean, that's usually where he lands. I don't want to sit here and predict. I think he's going to play no games because he's at MetLife Stadium, so that's what happens.
Yeah. Let's go away from that.
That could happen.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's just been so consistent that he has to miss at least 4. It's 8 years in a row he hasn't gone over 13 games, so that's pretty safe. A pretty safe bet that he's going to miss at least 4, I would say. But hopefully it doesn't go too much over that. Hopefully there's something mid-year that's not going to have long-term effects. I don't know, like nothing lower body that'll linger, maybe knock him out for the year. Hopefully something. He'll miss his 4 games in the middle of the year and get back for the playoffs, and he has been good at that. He hasn't missed any of the Cowboys playoff games since he was drafted. So as long as he's back for the playoffs and they can weather the storm, which they're prepared to do now because they have Olu, then I think you're going to get good value out of that contract.
So follow up to that in regards to Olu, right? And sorry to jump in here on that, but do you consider mid-season, even if Smith is healthy, maybe giving him a start here and there if a matchup looks good? Or do you just ride Tyron until it's like, all right, he's out. Now Olu plays these games here and there?
As long as Tyron is, playing the way he's played in recent years, I don't think there's any reason to mess with it. I think you would just give him his starts, let him play his 100%. As long as he's healthy, just because he's so good.
So good.
He's still probably he's the best in the league, I think. If he's Armstead, Trent Williams are in that conversation, but he's arguably the best in the league still, as long as he's out there. So I wouldn't mess with it too much, but more. Sure. I know they haven't played. They've said the plan is left tackle. I don't think he's practiced at right tackle, but I'd be curious about that on the other side because I know Morgan Moses last year. He was splitting some snaps with, I forget who their rookie or their young guy was that he was doing it with. But there were some games last year where he was in a platoon like that, where he was, rotating drives with one of their young guys. So if Olu can show some right tackle ability, if they try him out there, maybe that's something they do with Morgan Moses, who also has some injury concerns. But at left tackle, I wouldn't see it.
So to follow up on that, I'm so sorry again. Is that something you want him doing, like flip-flopping? Because some of the things we read about, not sure, the validity or whatever it is that part of AVT's injury history is just swapping between so many positions, right? So, would you want Olu to be a left tackle but can also play right? Or you just want to, park him behind Tyron Smith and just be do what he does, right? So, I get worried about that a little bit, flip-flopping him back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, there's legitimate concerns to that, especially seeing it with AVT. But, I personally do think there's value in him having that versatility, especially because, long-term, both of those spots are open. So it's what Tyron has a great year and plays 17 games, and they bring him back another year. And then Moses falls off this year, and he's constantly injured. And right tackle is open. So I personally would be open to playing him on both sides, especially right now while he's still developing. Just see what he can do with both sides, see if he can give you that ability. But I think the other side of it too, in terms of, could there be more injury risk or stunting the development if he's switching a little bit too much? Is it more comfort if you just leave him at one spot? And I think that is what they're going to do based on what we're seeing. But I would be curious to know if he could do right as well.
I mean, he did say that he's open to it, right? So that's a good thing. He's not saying that, like, I'm not going to do it. So.
Unlike Becton.
Unlike a certain
first round pick, which,
I feel for Becton, man. Like, his first year, like, he had the promise, and, like, I remember that executive poll after that first season, and they were like, I think they put him at 6th in terms of, like, left tackles, right? When they voted everyone, Trent Williams was obviously one, and Tyron Smith was really high up there too. But, like, I feel so bad for him. Like, that career should have worked out, right, with Becton if he never got hurt. If fucking what's his face, Greg Van Roten doesn't land on him, that would have worked out, right?
I think it would have. He was on track during his rookie year. I know there's a lot of drama after that in terms of staying healthy, like practicing, rehab, switching sides, all these things. But, like, just looking at rookie year, the way he played that year, he was on track to be really good if none of the injuries came along. But unfortunately, they did. So
but just back on that Olu point, I think I'm okay with him on the right also, just because he's open to it, and I think he just needs the reps. And I think tackle to tackle is not as big of a jump as guard to tackle like AVT did. I think that's like a very different, you're built different when you're a guard. You're like, tackles are kind of these taller, massive guys. The guards are a little bit more wide, solid. I don't know. It's just not as it's a different situation. But just to kind of switch gears a little bit. So you saw what I had sent you, and you saw our episode that we did with the Jets media and content creator draft that we did. So you had mentioned before, you felt you were top 5 pick. You mentioned Sabo blew it as well. So we just want to kind of get a gauge on that. Like, first, like, what Jets beat reporters, content creators, or media personalities do you hold in high regard? Which ones do you think are not so great or kind of redundant? And who would you pick? Who would be your number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I'd be biased to my Jets X Factor crew. I mean, Joe Blewett, Robbie Sabo, Rivka Board as well is an amazing writer for us at Jets X Factor. So, I mean, they'd probably be my top 3 picks, to be honest. But, I mean, in addition to that, I mean, I think looking at some of the beat reporters, I mean, I think Dennis Wazak does a really good job. He's one of my favorites.
Huge fan of him,
beat reporters. Because, I mean, I don't want to throw too many direct shots around, but I do think a lot of the beat does. Some of them aren't the greatest for one reason or another, but I think he does a really good job. Just like he's got good personality. Like, he doesn't really inject himself into any drama. Just kind of does his job. Nice peaceful follow. I value anyone who brings that to the table, because I don't want to see anyone's drama on my timeline. Which I hope I don't do for people who follow me. Like, I'm just trying to talk about the Jets. I don't need you to see me tweeting and doing all that. So
I like that about you too. By the way, you don't really kind of engage in the BS.
No, sometimes you guys troll the Patriot fans, which I really love. You're like, oh my god.
Well, that's different. I mean, they deserve it.
It's kind of great. Yeah,
John, I see that smirk on your face, and I know you're about to say something that is not above board. Let's not
wait. Before you say, I wanted to also give on this note, a shout out to Brandon Pokris. He's on your he's Jets X Factor reporter. Yeah, I was just on a podcast with him, Afterburners podcast with him the other day. I thought he was really, really intelligent dude, and I read some of his stuff. So
Yeah,
I definitely
a great job for us as well. Yeah,
definitely have him as an up and comer in the Jets media landscape.
Sure.
So yeah, man.
I'm just curious because you probably saw our draft, right? Who do you think had the best draft of the three of us? Like, was it like Monty because he picked you second overall, or like me because I took Blewett and Sabo?
Just for picking me, I think that's the best one. For
That's
sure.
fair.
That's all that needs to be said.
Let's go. Jump in, John.
Okay, so I guess this one's going to kind of gear back, and this is kind of what I was thinking when I look at this team and how it was formed, right? Like, and basically my question is, what's the balance of this offense going to look like in terms of run versus pass? Because it looks like just like based on like the way this O-line is formed, right? With Simpson and Moses being, I guess, more run, right? And then like even Tippmann and ABT being more run. Obviously, like, you know, left tackle is going to be pass protection, right? And also, in addition to that, like Jets drafted 2 running backs in this draft, right? It just seems like this is going to be like kind of copycat with the kind of what San Francisco does, where it's kind of like run first, but also have like some serious weapons on the outside. Like, is that kind of how it's going to be, or is it going to be kind of balanced, like, or just kind of like the way we've kind of seen Rodgers, like, you know, do his thing, right, in the passing game?
I think it's going to be a good balance, more so than like San Francisco has been really run heavy in terms of like they're generally leading the league in terms of their run percentage. I don't think they're going to be quite to that level. I mean, I just pulled up San Francisco. They had more runs than passes last year, which is usually only 1 or 2 teams a year do that in the league right now.
And to have that many outside weapons and a running back that can catch and still maintain that's crazy.
And still be doing that. So I don't think they're going to be to that extent, but I think they're going to try and do similar to what the Packers were doing a couple years ago. And I forget the exact number, but usually Rodgers was around 20th in pass attempts per game over those couple years. So I think they're going to try to lean towards run more than the average team, but not like to the extent of running more than passing. Like, you know, like basically San Francisco and Baltimore do that. Not a whole, I think Atlanta might have done it, but not a lot of teams do it. I don't think they're going to be quite to that extent, but I think it's going to be a good balance between both for sure. Because I mean, last couple of years, they've been one of the most pass-heavy teams in the league, mostly just because they're trailing so much. And that running game has barely gotten any attempts. They had the fewest or 4th fewest in the league in terms of rush attempts last year. So, like, they haven't had a chance to get Breece Hall going and, you know, get the offensive linemen getting downhill and run blocking because, like, they're just so bad at everything on offense that they're in trailing mode for the whole game. So I think they're going to try to get a really balanced offense this year.
Cool.
Yeah. Good. That's what we'd like to see, right? Like, we're just balanced, being able to do like everything well, which is important. And I want to shift this next question like back to the defense. And it's something, you know, we had talked about earlier, just to preface it, right? You had said that when I asked the question about can this defense go to another level, your answer was in relation to yes, because the pass rush hopefully will have more opportunity to play with a lead, you know, to paraphrase a little bit. Another thing that we've heard over this offseason is that Sauce will have the opportunity to travel a little bit, you know, against the best, you know, corners, and I think, or against the best receivers. And I think that is a thing that can elevate this defense as well, right? Because I really feel like in a December game against Miami that you have to have, I don't know why Sauce can't just be told to go erase Tyreek Hill. I don't want to see him. And Sauce can do it, right? But the caveat to that is some of the numbers that we've seen is that DJ Reed is only max, you know, effective on a certain side of the field. I'm sure you've seen this as well. So, like, is Sauce traveling the best idea? Does that expose DJ Reed? Like, how do you feel about that whole concept? Because I love it, to be honest, but.
Yeah, I mean, I do think they could be more open to it because they've been, you know, very strict with, you know, Sauce is on the left, Reed is on the right.
Right.
And, you know, there are definitely instances where it's like, you know, you would like to have Sauce on, you know, whatever player it might be. I think those Dolphins games are great examples because Reed is fantastic, but his only kryptonite last year was the Dolphins. Those
Right.
were his 2 worst games of the year. Most of almost half of the yards he allowed for the whole season were in those games. So I think there are moments like that where you would like to see them be open to deviating from that and just getting good matchups. But I do understand the appeal of what they do. I think it's a big part of why they're a good pass defense is because their defense is so simple that it makes it easy for the players to understand and play their game. And they don't have a lot of communication breakdowns back there. Like I think when the Jets in years where we watched bad Jets defenses, whether it was 2016 when they fell off, 2017 was bad, 21, whatever year you pick, I think we've seen a lot of busted coverages, guys just running wide open across the field, not because players are getting beat, but because players are in the wrong spot. But with this defense the past 2 years, you see very little of that, and I think that's a product of how simple the defense is. They just do a great job communicating and playing their roles because there's not a lot of complexity to it. So I think that is the appeal of what they do, is just allowing them to settle into their roles, have simple responsibilities. It helps the communication in the back end. So I understand why they do it, and I think for the most part it is the right thing to stick to for this scheme. But I think just a little more openness to it would be good. I think that's what Sauce is getting at when he was saying that. Like, I don't think we're going to see Pete Darrell Reeves this year. Like, every year he's just shadowing people. Because I don't think anyone in the NFL does that anymore.
Yeah.
So the rules, it's, very hard to do. But perhaps, he was saying that because there's going to be a little more openness to it in certain situations, which I think would be a good thing.
So to piggyback on that, and sorry to cut you off, Monty, just to follow up on that question, does being that simple on defense, right? Does that simplicity expose them when they play against offensive geniuses like Mike McDaniel? They play Sean McVay this year, against those an Andy Reid type. Is there a detriment to being a simplistic defense?
Yeah, I think there can be. I mean, for the most part, it's worked. I mean, the results have been there. We know how good this defense has been. I mean, they're third best with DVOA this year, second most games over the past 2 years, allowing under 300 yards. They've been very good with this strategy. Right. But I do think there are some weaknesses to it. You've seen, I think there are certain things that their scheme gets exposed by, and that's screens to running backs. I think are a lot of it has to do with the way the defensive line plays, just how aggressive they are playing up the field. I think screens to running backs have caused them a lot of trouble. Any sort of power or gap run or draw type run, I think is effective against them. Quarterback runs and scrambles, very effective. So I think there are some things that they've consistently been beaten by that they haven't shown the ability to adjust towards, just because they don't really change their scheme up that much. So I think there are some things that you can consistently exploit them with, but at the same time, they just have so much talent that I think having a simple scheme allows that talent to be maximized, because you're not, for example, Hassan Reddick, I think he's going to come here and he's going to be better than he was at previous stops because he's had to play a lot of coverage the past few years. But with the Jets, I think he's going to come here, and he's never going to do that because maybe a couple times, but the Jets almost never make their defensive linemen drop because their blitz scheme just isn't that active or complex. So he's going to come here and he's going to be able to just get on the edge and pin his ears back like Bryce Huff was doing here. And I think that's an example of how their scheme being so simple allows talented guys to just be talented and not be held back because of diverse responsibility. So I think the better your talent is, the better the scheme is. 2021, they didn't have talent. They were running the same scheme and they were terrible because they didn't have good players. So if you're not going to overcome that with creative designs, you're going to be bad because you're just not going to create pressure without the blitz. That's what happened. And they're not going to be able to cover behind that. But when you do have elite talent, which they do have on defense right now, I think the simpler your scheme is, the better you can play because you're just letting those guys outplay the other team.
Great point. Great point.
So.
So kind of, on the note of looking at, teams and kind of how things are going to play out, have you done, or, maybe your team done any, film study or looked into how the new kickoff rules are going to change the strategy of the game, obviously with the perspective of the Jets in mind, but, maybe just in general in the NFL?
Yeah, I've looked into it a little bit. I'm very intrigued to see how this is going to go. I think
me too.
This is something that I think, like, even by the end of the first week, I think this could be one of those national stories of like, this is the thing in the NFL right now that is, defining the changes in the game. I think this could be a year, and I know they're doing this on, I think, a 1-year tryout basis, so like it could be adjusted after this year. So with this being the 1 year, I think we could see a huge spike, and like I'm thinking we could see multiple touchdowns in the league.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking too.
I think it's going to be out of hand this year, too, because 30-yard line touchback. There's going to be a ton of returns because you don't want that. Like, unless you're facing someone who proves himself to be an amazing returner, or if it's a situation where you just cannot allow a touchdown. Like a 30-yard start is generally, if you get that, you consider that good field position. Right. So there's going to be a ton of returns, and I think the way the format is set up is going to make the returns that do happen even more productive because it helps the blockers that they're already set up where they're supposed to be. So I think we're going to see a lot of returns, and I think the returns we do get are going to be more productive. So a lot of touchdowns.
One thing I was kind of thinking or seeing, especially with the fact that they're, the opposing team's not allowed to move until the receiver has possession of the ball. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, with that said, and the fact that, they kind of have that open lane, they have that time to, a lot more a lot of time to get steam and, kind of cut and do what they need to do. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, or do you think we'll see more like top talent receiving, like if you're down, maybe a score or two, you throw in a Christian McCaffrey, you throw in a Breece Hall, instead of just your regular returner. So do you see something like that? And also, do you think that's why we kind of went after Tariq Cohen for this situation?
I think that is something we could see. And I think it's something that will develop as the season goes on. Like, as teams see, like, okay, this is a legitimate play now. Because the reason you don't see them on kickoffs is because, for example, last year there was
murder ball.
There's one kickoff return a game. So you're putting them back there for an injury-prone play that most of the time is going nowhere. So it just the play doesn't matter, or it didn't matter. But I think this year, like a few weeks in, if we see like there could be a chance every time he touches the ball to score a touchdown, it's like, what makes this play different than a regular play from scrimmage? It matters just as much. So I think it could get to the point where they're so productive that you do see, and we're not saying routinely, but like clutch, if you're getting the ball back at the end of the game, you're down by 3 points trying to prepare for a comeback drive. Why not let Breece Hall touch the ball on the kickoff before it starts?
Well, because it's a kamikaze mission. Every kickoffs are a kamikaze mission. Like 100%. Like there's going to be a decapitation at some point.
They're going to be safer though. That's what they're trying to get.
That's the point with these new rules, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think it'll be super common, but I could see like clutch situations. Maybe teams will.
They'll get a little aggressive, probably.
Yeah, they'll get thrown in.
Internet
issues.
Yeah, it's okay. We have 2 more questions.
Yeah, we're pretty much almost at the end here. So we, just 2 more.
Did you guys see that the Steelers, or maybe it was Russell Wilson, said that Justin Fields could return kickoffs if needed?
What?
Yeah, they were talking about.
That's real smart. That's real smart.
Justin Fields returning kickoffs. I mean,
that's real smart. I mean, your backup quarterback gets hurt on the kickoff. Russell Wilson comes out, gets hurt, and now you're down to Mason Rudolph. Basically, that's real smart. That's real smart. No shot. I wouldn't do it in a heartbeat. Yeah,
that's crazy. Did you see, John? This is up your alley. Maybe you want to check into it. There was like a golf club in Ohio where there was like a big brawl, like
the Father's Day brawl. Yeah, I saw it.
Man brawl on Father's Day.
There's a 37% chance John was there and just will never tell us.
No, that's not true. I'm not a violent person. You know that.
Yeah, true.
No, you actually aren't, which is interesting because
because I'm sober.
Fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Monty, I don't. You definitely didn't. I never met non-sober John, which is probably a good thing. I remember one time we were at the bar where John was not drinking, and I had a scotch, and I was sitting there and I was sipping it. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Saying obscene words, sober, mind you. And he's like, when I was drinking, I would have drank 4 of those, and the time it takes you to drink 1, and it was like a nice scotch.
It's scotch, bro.
Yeah, I was like, dude, this is a scotch. Neat.
This isn't Jameson.
He's like, nope. He's like, I would have drank 4 of those and then had shots.
Oh wow!
Like, now I understand.
That's why he's sober.
Now I get it. I'm glad you're sober.
Yeah, I am too.
I was cool, man. I had hair too back then.
Yeah, what?
Yeah. What hair?
I had hair.
Hey, listen, man.
Yeah.
Look,
I remember those days.
You're cool. You're cool now, all right? So
he said.
Did we all freeze?
Did you freeze too?
No, I'm here.
Right. What happened? What did you say?
He said his internet went down. He's restarting his laptop.
Yeah, just tell him. Okay, we had 2 more questions, including one that's like a sign-off question and all that. Yeah. I'll just let it keep recording.
We can keep talking. I find a lot of his perspectives are very interesting, especially the one about like the defense being able to play really fast and not having to think about assignments. I think that's a really interesting point. And then on top of it, I didn't realize the Reddick point that like maybe not a lot, but he did play some coverage and was asked to do those things. I mean, if you're looking at this team now, he can just pin his ears back and go to town. Like, I mean, that's just an added bonus. I'm like, just do this thing, man. Right? So, and then maybe any concern about him not being around. I mean, whatever, dude. You're going to be asked to play wide 9.
Yeah, I don't think you
match the quarterback, right? Like, and he's working out, John. Like you said it. Like he's working out. He's not going to show up out of shape or anything like that.
Yeah, don't fix what's broken, I guess, right? With the defense, right? At this point, it's not broken by any means.
Correct. Yeah. And and I just want to see that we're open to kind of very obvious things. Like we don't have to break our backs just to be this simplistic defense that we wanted. Like there was 0%. There's 0% reason why Waddle, who could have been easily shut down by someone of Sauce's caliber, should go off for 100 and something yards and score on us in a game where Tyreek Hill is not on the field, though.
But I think when we look at like that kind of thing, the way that I'm looking at it is fourth quarter, you're up 17-13, 3rd and 9. Sauce, go erase Tyreek. Right? Like certain situations, you just have to be like, hey, look, best on best, our best is better than yours.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if he's erasing Tyreek, though. I've got to be honest.
He did.
He did. He's erasing Tyreek, bro.
I know he has done it, but I'm saying, like, I don't know if he's just.
If it's a limited sample size, right? Every play, can you erase Tyreek? No.
That's what I mean.
Erase him on the big
enough.
On a big play, yeah.
Or just make Tua say, "Oh, damn, that's Sauce," and hesitate for a second.
Yeah,
but like that's what you want in those like have to have it situations.
Yeah, like I mean, the game to refer to is probably I actually my favorite example of Sauce just being the most absolute dominant thing, and it sealed this All-Pro status. I mean, there was the Justin Jefferson game in his rookie year. but the real game to look at is the DK Metcalf game. He literally, like, DK Metcalf was literally frustrated, infuriated. I think he had one catch that game. I could be wrong on that. He might have had 0 actually.
But I will also make my favorite Sauce rep was last season, and it was shown over and over and over and over on social media.
Snap.
The McLaurin, the McLaurin rep. It was just like everything, stopping on a dime, beating him to the like every single thing you want a corner to do. He did, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
and versus McLaurin is no scrub. He's one of my favorite receivers. Actually,
yeah, dude,
I like him a lot.
He's Gary Wilson, right? Those Ohio State guys.
Yeah, he goes to whatever team and gets it done, no matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah.
Question: is Scary Terry the best nickname of all the receivers in the league?
Well, I think he doesn't like that nickname. He doesn't do that anymore. So, it was a very great nickname. I don't know why he doesn't.
But what I will say is yes, but only because Chris Berman isn't giving people nicknames every week.
I missed that, man. He was so good. He's so good, Berman.
My favorite one ever, and it makes me laugh every time I say it, is Jeff Philadelphia Feagles. How do you come up with that? It's just amazing. Or Mike, you're in good hands. All stop.
Because all state, yeah.
I mean,
hey, what's up, Mike? Welcome back, buddy.
No idea what's happening.
Yeah,
it happens.
Yeah, it's all good. We were just reminiscing nicknames. I was arguing that Scary Terry might be the best nickname for all wide receivers right now. And then we were talking about Berman, how he's just like amazing at doing these things. And I remember all the TJ Humanzada ones that he had were just so freaking awesome.
There's not good ones out there right now. I feel like sports in general, we're not coming up with good nicknames as much as we used to.
No, not at all, right? Like even basketball, you had like the Glove, Gary Payton. Now guys are just like weird nicknames. Nobody puts.
It's usually just initials. Like there's not
CP3
and Sauce might be the best nickname in football right now.
I was gonna say, I think we got the best one right now.
Yeah.
Sauce. Like you're so used to it being his name, like you forget. It's like a Magic Johnson caliber name. Like it just becomes his name. It's so good.
Exactly.
And also he backs it up. All right, so I guess here's the last silly question, right? Who on this team looks like they chug a beer worse than Rodgers? I guess that I don't know if you've seen the clip of like David Bakhtiari drinking like 50 beers in like a minute, and then Rodgers struggling with just one. Who do you think is the worst at it?
I feel like there'd be someone who like maybe you would expect to be good, but actually isn't. So I'm thinking like offensive lineman. Maybe you would think an offensive lineman is good at it, but maybe it's a more humble guy. How about Tyron Smith? I feel like dominant offensive lineman. You feel like he would be great, but he kind of actually doesn't like go that hard with it.
Maybe
that's
kind of my thought process.
We asked this question to Izzy as well, and his answer again, it was Joe Tippmann, who you would think would be really good. My answer, that's what I said. He's like, Joe doesn't drink. What?
Or he's not a big drinker. He doesn't.
Not a big drinker. And then, but my answer would have been Sauce, because Sauce has come out and said he doesn't drink. He doesn't like do any of that stuff. Yeah. So it probably would be Sauce. But I agree. I would have said Tippmann.
Yeah. All right. Monty, go for it.
Yeah, man. So, as we all know here, we're all painfully familiar with, 2023 didn't exactly go the way that Jets fans kind of expected or wanted, or how things were hyped to be. Tell us why, 24 is going to be special for the Jets, and tell any fans that, maybe watching, the podcast, what us Jet fans have to get excited for this year.
I mean, I've made some posts or tweets. I should just keep calling them tweets. Like I've been slowly turning to like the X side of the force, calling them posts.
Good.
I'm trying to stick with defiantly stick with calling it Twitter. I have an extension on my computer that changed the logo to the bird.
Back to the bird.
So that's how committed I am. But so I'll say tweet. But I've made some tweets. Like I've been a huge proponent of. I think this is the time for Jets fans to really be optimistic, like own it, and not. I know we're all trained to have that, like but let's hold back, let's wait and see kind of mentality, and it's earned. I mean, never more than last year, but this is the time I think for us to come out and talk our smack to other fan bases. Why we're going to win the AFC East, why we're going to win the Super Bowl, because it's logical this time. That's the thing that I'm trying to get at with Jets fans, because we've had hope so many times, and warranted at times, other times not, but on paper, just objectively, if you take this roster and you put it in San Francisco, you put it in Dallas, you put it in Pittsburgh, any of these other teams that you're used to seeing good, and it would be the Super Bowl favorite. But because it's on the Jets, you're just ready for something to go wrong. It's hard to accept that it's actually an elite roster. But objectively speaking, this is a great roster. This is a top 3 roster in the NFL. I think it's fair to say that. On paper, assuming all these guys are on the field at full strength, other than San Francisco, I think it goes toe-to-toe. And they go toe-to-toe with them, but I'll put them ahead because they have the success. But other than that, I think this roster's better than any other, or can make the argument to be better than any other in the league. So this is the time to be confident, because it is truly there, and they have to go out there and do it. They have to stay healthy. All that goes without being said, but they have the team legitimately. You don't have to do gymnastics in your head to convince yourself as to why. If this guy develops, there's some young players you want to take leaps, but it feels like every year you have to talk yourself into why they're going to be good. This team, they have good players, and it's just like Garrett Wilson is great. Sauce Gardner is great. Breece Hall is great. Quinn Williams is great. Quincy Williams is great. C.J. Mosley is great. And you can go on and on. Hassan Reddick, Aaron Rodgers, Tyron Smith. You don't have to convince yourself that this is a good team. It is one of the best teams in the league, and it's anyone in the league should be able to see it. Yeah. Other fan bases don't want to admit it because it's the Jets, but if it was their team, they would be touting it as the best roster they've ever seen. So it is there. This is the year for Jets fans to be confident. If it blows up in your face, who cares? You're going to be back here next year anyway. You're not going anywhere. So you got nothing to lose. This is the year to talk your shit. Go out there and do it.
That's what I like to hear.
He talked so dirty. That was so dirty.
Really quick.
Oh, gosh.
To end, I want to read back to you a tweet that you had sent out on June 14th. And this is you verbatim. I love that Rodgers has given the Jets the villain role. I don't want the lovable losers role like the Lions had last year. Nah. All anyone has ever done is clown this team, never showing Jet fans any sympathy. I look forward to watching everyone load their success. That's right. That's spectacular, and I love to end it on that. Amazing.
Yeah,
100%.
Win loss total.
Yeah.
Win loss total. What do you think, real quick? Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, quickly on that tweet, I feel like the Lions come up last year and everyone's rallying around them, look, this Lions team, good for Detroit, good for them. But with the Jets, whenever the Jets suck, they don't have the same sympathy for Jets fans. Nope. It's you're a Jets fan. I feel bad for you. It's and maybe it's because the big market bias, they don't want to root for a New York fan base the way they do for a Midwestern, town, but. The Lions come up, it's good for them. The Bengals came up a couple years ago. It's good for those Bengals fans. They've been waiting for it. But no one says that about the Jets. They don't want to see them be good for some reason. The idea of them being good irks people. But if another team is coming up, it's that's an up-and-coming team. People rally around them. But they don't want to see that from the Jets for some reason. So I like that Aaron Rodgers has come in here and double down on that. So I
Hell
forward to them being good and people having reasons as to why it's not legit, why they're not going to get it done in the playoffs, or whatever they may have to say about it. I look forward to that. I don't want everyone being like, let's root for the Jets now that it's the playoffs, like they kind of were with the Lions last year. Don't want that. None of you gave us anything all these years, and we were trying to tell you, like, look at this draft class we had in 2022. This is going to be really good. I think we're an up and coming team. Like, where were they the last couple of years? Giving them the credit. Yeah. So don't want it now.
Agreed. And I agree completely. It's like everyone just bashes Jet fans, and it's funny because Monty and I always say, like, we want to be covered like the Lions are, right? Like, why not? Like, why do the Jets always have to be like the team that's beat up on? But after seeing that tweet, I'm with you 100%. I want the hate. Let's bring it. Bring the hate, and let's throw it in their face.
Cool.
Let's go. Like that. That's what all these years have built up to. It has not been building up to sympathy. It's been building up to vengeance. That's what we've been looking for. So on the heels of my confident statements for this team, for my win-loss prediction, I'm going to stand on it. I'm going to say they win 12 games this year. I'm going with 12-5.
Solid.
And even that, I feel like
it's conservative.
I feel like
possibly.
it could be more. I feel like it could be more.
Yeah.
It's really there. This roster it's fantastic, and it can be more than that. But I'll put it at 12-5.
Yeah,
should be
you know who else is fantastic? You for coming on the show.
Yes,
yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is one of the most fun interviews, or probably the most, to be honest, of any interview that I've had or guest appearance. So this was a blast.
You heard it here, folks. All right, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.
And let's do it again.
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. 1 second. All right, you cut the recording.